Hello, everyone. Welcome back to my loyal subscribers, and a warm hello to all of our new viewers joining us today. Thank you so much for tuning in and being a part of our community. If you enjoy our content, definitely don't forget to like and subscribe and turn on that notification button so you never miss an upload. All right, guys, if you don't know who I am Dr. Jasmine. I'm a naturopathic doctor and a nutritionist, and it's always my pleasure to share with you what I know and continue to learn about all things natural holistic health. All right, so this video is actually piggybacking off of some of my last videos that have begun that discussion of metabolism and thyroid health and how that affects our ability to grow healthy hair. So we kind of looked at how having a hypo or hyper functioning thyroid can negatively impact hair growth. We saw that hypothyroidism slows down growth, so we see shedding. We see that the hyperthyroid actually speeds things up too fast, so we see shedding. And we also looked at those crystal-like components called oxalates and how they can kind of grab up that hormone and keep it from functioning at the rate that it should, thus leading to the shed that we see. Well, this video, I really want to dedicate it to a pretty cool phenomenon called molecular mimicry. Okay, now molecular mimicry is exactly what it sounds like. It's two molecules that mimic each other or look very similar. By definition, molecular mimicry is defined as a structural similarity between antigens coded by different genes, which basically just means two proteins from different organisms look eerily similar, right? You know, for all intents and purposes right now, it's like taking a protein from bread and a protein from an apple and looking at those and saying, whoa, those guys could be twins, right? Well, this phenomenon is interesting because what we've seen with like autoimmune conditions is that certain microbes in your gut look like certain tissues and can induce an autoimmune condition. So to your body, your immune system, this organism looks like, let's say, your joints, and you get RA, right? That kind of rheumatoid arthritis, autoimmune type condition. When it comes to your thyroid, though, we're actually concerned about two different proteins. We're concerned about casein, which is a protein in dairy. And then we're worried about gluten. Specifically, it's a part of gluten called gliadin. That part is the protein that looks like the thyroid hormone. So what happens in your gut when you're eating gluten, when you're eating dairy, that casein, over time, because of the way that these proteins interact with our gut lining, we start to see a widening of our tight junctions. So typically, like, every kind of in between my fingers, these are tight junctions. Like, nothing can get through this, right? But the more gluten and dairy come, the more these start to loosen and they widen and they get really big. And now there's these holes, right? So there's gluten, there's dairy, it's getting into the bloodstream. And your body's like, oh my God, I'm freaking out. This should not be here. And it starts to attack it and creates damage. But because these proteins look like your thyroid, now the immune system is on high alert, right? The immune system is like, oh my God, we got to get all this gunk out. I don't care if it's it or not. If it looks like gluten or casein, we're attacking it. And your thyroid, molecular mimicry, right? It looks very similar to these. So your immune system just like attack, attack, attack. And we can experience both Hashimoto's and Graves' disease from this type of mimicry. From my understanding, a lot of the difference comes from like your genetic kind of code, what you're going to experience versus that hyper or hypo. But if you've ever been diagnosed or if you've been treated for a thyroid condition but you're not seeing improvement, it might be worthwhile to consider, looking at these antigens as potential allergens or sensitivities for you, because it could be causing problems that you never would have thought that your diet could be a big trigger for you. Now, something cool, some research I was looking at actually links celiac disease, which is the actual like disease where you're actually truly allergic to gluten, to an autoimmune thyroiditis. And there's actually a higher prevalence like a 4 times greater prevalence in celiac disease patients to have an autoimmune thyroid disease, right? Kind of freaky, right? But it is been linked to like a common genetic predisposition. So there's certain genes that these individuals do have that kind of make them more predisposed. Um, doesn't mean that if you don't have these genes that it's not still a good idea to kind of reduce this. I always think about conditions in layers, right? If you remember Shrek, there's like layers of the onion, right? But the more layers we can remove, the less stress is on the body, or in this case, on your thyroid. So one of those layers can be removing gluten, and one is removing um, dairy. These are some really good ways just to start taking some stress off of the immune system. And so over time, it starts to not attack you, right? And have that autoimmune type of disposition, if you will. Now, when it comes to doing like a gluten, dairy-free diet, this is something you've got to stick with. It's not like, oh, I'm going to do it for 2 weeks and then I'm going to go back to what I was doing. This is something you want to do for at least 6 months. And that's because it takes about that amount of time for the immune system to calm down, basically. Because it's pretty nice. Like you can typically see reduction in reaction to gluten and dairy. Usually I typically find for people at about 14 days, a lot of that antigen is out, but your immune system is still revved up. So if you go and throw some more in there, because your immune system is still revved up, it'll attack it at a very high level. Versus if you wait and you allow all that antigen to come down, you allow your immune system to calm down, if you were to eat it again, you might still get a response, but more than likely it won't be as triggering as the first time because you've, deprived yourself. The other thing about that is I always like to make sure that if you're doing this, please work with an integrative practitioner who can help you work on the gut. Because a lot of times our gut is full of bad bacteria. And because that gut lining, remember, it looks like this. If you're never doing anything to help those tight junctions close back up, then as soon as you bring gluten and dairy back in, they're just going to go right back through and cause the same problem, right? So we want to make sure that we're using things that are helping to close up that gut lining so that if we do decide to add these things back, we're no longer getting that effect. And then also, if you are going to bring those things back, doing it very sparingly. It shouldn't be a daily, maybe not even a weekly occurrence. Something else to kind of think about is if you're deciding this is something you want to do, definitely start with one. If you can start with both, do it. But I know there's some people out there who are like, I can't live without my cheese. I can't live without my ice cream. Start with gluten, get that down, figure out what you can and can't eat, and then go for the dairy. I would definitely start kind of your 6 months after you've taken out both. But this is a strategy to get you on the right track without feeling completely deprived. I also recommend trying those naturally gluten and dairy-free foods, right? Like, don't try and just replace everything with those alternatives out there, which there are plenty for both gluten-free and dairy-free. But, stick to your proteins and your rice and your beans and your vegetables and fruits. There's lots of foods that naturally just don't contain gluten or dairy. So try and make a bulk of your diet those foods. That helps to make this process a lot easier, especially if you're going out to restaurants and things like that. It can help you to know what you can and can't eat. All right. So really huge. This is something that I found to be a big game changer for some people in their thyroid condition and then overall in their hair. Because even with that, like, gut lining, those tight junctions opening up, that can decrease just overall GI function. Remember, your GI tract is where you absorb a lot of nutrients. Well, if you're not absorbing nutrients or you're creating all this inflammation from your immune system, all your nutrients have to go to decreasing that. So there's usually not a lot left for your hair. So it all kind of works together, and this is just one of those things that we can easily start to control. And there's so many resources out there. Like, I just found a dairy-free ice cream bar for my son. I'm like, whoa, he's dairy-free. I never thought he'd be able to eat ice cream, but it's there and it's available. You know, it's summer. Occasionally we'll have something like that, but it's there and it's available, and you can enjoy and indulge and live a full life, even being gluten and dairy free. All right, guys, that's all I have for you today. Definitely, if you like this video, please like and subscribe. Also, comment any questions. Feel free to leave them here, or you can always email me at askdrjazz@gmail.com. If you'd like to work with me, because I'd love to work with you, definitely visit me at www.drjasmine.com to book your appointment. All right, guys, may God bless you in your health. Bye.